Hello and welcome to the Scatterville channel, and today I want to see if the new i5-11400F, arguably the best budget gaming CPU you can buy right now, would be a suitable processor to pair up with a high-end graphics card like the 6700 XT to ultimately see if this CPU and GPU combination could be ludicrous for 1440p gaming. On that note, do comment down below what games you want to see tested in these sort of videos, because at the moment I'm just testing whatever comes to my head in my Steam library, but I want to hear what you guys have to say. That way maybe you'll be more enticed to come over to these videos every time I make them. So do let me know in the comment section below and I'll read them. So we'll be getting into benchmarks and some analysis in this video, as well as a highlight of the graphics card we're using. But before that, a quick message from our sponsor.
If you're looking to finally activate your gaming PC with a Windows license, but you don't want to spend upwards of $100 on a key, then consider taking a visit to VIPSEDkey.com. There you can grab an inexpensive and legitimate key for Windows 10, softwares like Office 2016, and even for games found on Steam and Origin. So for example, if you're wanting to activate your gaming PC with a Windows 10 Pro key, through using my 12% off discount code VIPScatter, you can snag it for as low as $18 and never have to stare at that Activate Windows watermark ever again. Anyways, I'll have a link to VIP SED key in addition to my discount code at the top of the description.
If you guys don't know already, the i5-11400 and its F variant, 6 cores, 12 threads, costs about $160 to $180 depending on the model, goes up to 4.4 gigahertz, really good for the money. But what you may not know much about is this aftermarket version of the 6700 XT I'll be using for this video. This here is the Powercolor Hellhound RX 6700 XT, and this is such a beefed up card from Powercolor, as typical from what they do usually for their aftermarket cards. And I just want to do a little spill on the specifications. This can turbo boost up to 2,581 megahertz. It has 12 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory. Of course, it's on that 7nm architecture, and really the only downside of this card is that it has a 192-bit memory bus, say versus 256, which is on the 3060 Ti, which is similarly priced, at least in terms of MSRP. But the design, the build quality, and the cooling performance is a lot better than the reference model. These three fans right here do definitely help towards cooling off the chip inside of here, and can actually probably assist in some pretty good overclocking, since the 6700 XT can probably go up to 2,800 megahertz, but that's a little bit of a challenge with the reference card model. But with this aftermarket version with Powercolor, with beefed up VRMs and of course beefed up cooling, I think it's certainly possible. But yeah, the three fans here, RGB, and they do shine in your case at night especially. So if you wanted some nice underglow on the bottom of your case, this GPU has the aesthetics and the cooling performance to hopefully satisfy that need. But to measure if this is going to be a good CPU and GPU combination, in addition to the benchmarks I'm going to show you, I want you to look at the top left of the screen in all the gameplay, and that'll provide the CPU and GPU utilization metrics for this combo. And ideally, you want the graphics card combination to be as high as possible, while the CPU utilization to be no more than, say, 60%. So to begin, here's Apex Legends, and no issues at all. 172 frames per second on average, with 125 frames per second for the 1% low. Smooth, high frame rate, exactly what we need. Then how about CSGO? Well, this game was slightly stuttery for me. Could have just been the game itself, because the frame rates were really high and uncapped, but I got 244.8 frames per second with 63.1 for the 1% low. On Cyberpunk 2077 though, I decided not to use any ray tracing, and I got 52.6 frames per second average and 43.5 for the 1% low when we're running the game at ultra settings. But with ray tracing turned on, the gaming performance did suffer quite a bit. So again, if you're looking for ray tracing in this card, you're not going to find it. Then on to Death Stranding with maxed graphics and using AMD Fidelity X scaling, which can help increase the frames per second by dynamically affecting the resolution while you play. We got 172.2 frames per second and 142 frames per second for the 1% low. So that game completely and utterly was not a problem at all for this CPU and GPU combination, and seeing that high of frame rate on a $160 CPU paired up with that high-end card is a really good sign. Then onto Fortnite with maxed graphical settings, 1440p on my benchmark map, which throws everything the game has to have into this little course. At the CPU and GPU, we got 81.5 frames per second for the average and 49.0 for the 1% low. And this is the extremities of Fortnite. You can probably get much higher than this in a regular game instead of my benchmark map. But again, a good thing to see. Then onto Forza Horizon 4, my favorite game, at ultra settings, 136.5 frames per second for the average and 112.9 frames per second for the 1% low. No issues at all there. Let's move on. Going on to Red Dead Redemption 2 using the Vulkan API with graphics preferred for the graphics quality setting at 1440p, we got an average of 67.8, a minimum frame rate of 30.2, and a maximum of 89.4. So fairly balanced across the board. RDR2 is a more graphically intense game to run, and even at 1440p, a high resolution, not really a problem with this mid-range CPU and high-end graphics card. It could be a little bit higher admittedly, but I mean, some of the other games on this list ran tremendously well, so no real issues there. Then onto Valheim though at max graphical settings as well using the Vulkan API, 78.4 frames per second and 60 frames per second for the 1% low. So a smooth, high frame rate experience, and the game is still an alpha, beta, or whatever version it is, so it isn't completely optimized, I want to say. But even then, you can totally play Valheim if you want with everything completely maxed out and still be well above 60 frames per second. Then finishing out with Call of Duty Warzone, max graphical settings, with everything cranked up, 166.9 frames per second average, 127.9 frames per second for the 1% low. And all those benchmarks right there should kind of tell the story. This budget 6-core CPU from Intel is not having a problem whatsoever, totally using up that aftermarket Powercolor RX 6700 XT. And note, that was everything being run at stock. Not even this being overclocked, which it certainly can do. And in that case, we probably get even more frames per second. And I would put my money on the i5 11400 still being able to fully utilize this card even with it overclocked. So in conclusion, I think this shows that the i5 11400 is a very capable gaming CPU, even up to an aftermarket 6700 XT that can definitely be pushed farther. And even if you were to say overclock this card, you could probably still utilize the full potential of this with this $160 to $180 budget gaming CPU. And even then, I don't think the narrative would change too much if you say compared this to an 11600K, because from other benchmarks, even with a 3080, the difference between this and 11600K, which is about $100, was not that much. So the 11400 is definitely a stud. And if you are looking for a 6700 XT that is definitely an absolute killer, do check out this Hellhound Edition card from Powercolor. Looks great, build quality is awesome, and the power delivery will be there if you do want to overclock this card and push it even further. Let's just hope that stock and prices do get better, because this is a seriously good card for gamers. It just needs to get into the hands of them. So that is it for this video, and seriously, thank you for watching all the way till the end. Things are getting a little crazy here, trying to move out, but the housing market is absolute ASS, and that's a little bit of a problem right now. With this, I'm gonna have to scrounge up a little bit more money than what I originally planned to. I'm fine, but things are just crazy here at the Scattervolt Studio. So I do appreciate those of you who watch all the way to the end of these videos, increase that viewer attention rating, and help out this video in the algorithm versus everything else. It means a lot. So with all that said, if you want to become more connected with the Scattervolt community, I've got a Discord, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and a Twitter, all linked in the description below. And with all that said, this is the Scattervolt channel, signing out.